Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. Okay, so we're tackling this word Upadana. So it's translated as clinging, sometimes, oopsie, glasses, sometimes grasping. Trying to get the thing off my glasses there. The shine off like that. Oh dear me. How's that? Okay. Les lunettes. Half glasses. So it's translated as clinging, sometimes grasping. It's important because it's the eighth link on dependent origination, right? Now, its literal meaning, according to the Pali Dictionary, that material substratum by means of which an active process is kept alive and going. Fuel, supply, provision. So in other words, its role in the psyche is the same as something like petrol or electricity in the car. Yeah, it sustains the process. So there are four of these clingings. The Dharma is very good at lists. So we've got four of these. The first one is, it won't surprise you, clinging to sensual pleasure, clinging to rites and rituals as if they were liberating, clinging to views and opinions, and finally, of course, clinging to the view of self. So if we look at the first one, most of you will know this, it's the desire for sensual pleasure. But remember that there are six senses in the Buddha's teaching, and the sixth, of course, is the mind itself. So it means all our emotions, all our thoughts, etc., which is dependent usually on some physical base. And the problem is that, of course, it's when we're driven by this sort of desire, it's never fulfilling, right? As soon as we are fulfilled, we rest for a little while and then we want some more. And it leads us to manipulating the world we're living in, right? To make it fit into me. So we're constantly having this little strife or struggle, sometimes quite minor, little irritations and things like that, and sometimes pretty major. But anything that arises out of that desire to seek happiness in pleasures, in the six sensual pleasures, is obviously going to lead to some level of unsatisfactoriness. So how do we tackle that? Well, we know it's through Vipassana. To see it clearly, to see that process clearly is the first understanding. And then, of course, there's the practice of not indulging it. So if we can make a distinction here, when we eat toast, it makes us happy. But if we eat toast in order to make us happy, there's going to be a problem, okay? That's the one we don't want. And the other thing that the Buddha uses is restraint. He's big on restraint. So in other words, whenever we feel that compulsive nature over something, doesn't matter what it is, toast, cup of tea, to just sort of hold back and let go of it. Wait for that over energy to give way. And if possible, do without one. It's like when you walk along the street and you come across a cafe, and the coffee sort of hooks your nose and reels you in. See, it's sort of resisting that and just walk steadfastly past that cafe, at least until the next one. Yeah. But it's also really restraining everything which is becoming obsessional. And don't forget fasting. So fasting isn't only, not eating if it's become obsessional. It's all the social media, the news, the videos, the shopping, etc., etc. Anything that comes compulsive, we stop for a while just to let go of it, right? When we come on retreat, the first 3 days are always difficult, or one of the things that makes the first 3 days really difficult is the change of habits. Like drinking, getting up at a different hour, not eating at the same time. All these things, are irritating. We don't like to change our habits. So that's the first clinging to sensual pleasure. The next one is clinging to rites and rituals as a religious practice. Now, some of it is very supportive. For instance, bowing. So bowing can be an expression of surrender, of gratitude, of a sense of offering, like you're offering your day for the benefit of others. And it can be a sense of awe, when you bring the profundity of the Buddha's teachings to mind, you say, how did he do it? Lighting a candle. See, that can remind us of the three paths, inverted commas, within the Eightfold Path. So the light is the path of insight, the warmth, the path of love, and the action of the flame, the path of wholesome works, good works. And it's important, to recite the refuges and precepts every morning, because that just reminds you what your life is about. Ultimately, it gives it that deeper meaning. Chanting, beading, it's all good, to keep the mind steady, to stop it wandering all over the place. And of course, taking refuges and precepts as a public declaration is, where you're committing yourself to the path, has a real strengthening effect. It doesn't mean to say that you might not become a Muslim later on. It's just that at this present moment, you're devoted to this particular teaching. So all these practices, I was going to say, actually, it's like sealing a particular relationship with the public rite of marriage. There's the christening, or the naming ceremony, and there's burials. These are all rituals, are very meaningful, but in themselves, unfortunately, they don't lead to liberation. Never mind. Number 3, well, this is a big one: clinging to views and opinions. I mean, that's, our whole politics has now become polarizing because of people clinging to their views and opinions. And what happens is that you forget about the issue and you start to attack the person. These arguments are called ad hominem, argumentum ad hominem. There's a bit of Latin there, which means that the speaker attacks the character, the motive, some other attribute of the person who's making the argument. Forget the issue, right? As long as they can humiliate the other, they've won the argument. And interestingly enough, the Buddha actually, in very early strata of the discourses, tells his monks and nuns not to get involved in these open debates. So you just come away either with a big ego, or you just come away humiliated. Yeah, just on just my own reflection, right up until I think Thatcher came in, politics tended to still be gentlemanly. It's still patriarchal, so gentlemanly. But then the names came out. They started calling conservatives who didn't follow her way the wets, if you remember. People who were unemployed became scroungers, and so the whole thing began to get quite ugly, really. There was Cameron making fun of Farage, making fun of his name, his Ponzi foreign sounding pronunciation. I've got all these little things. And recently, Polanski was made fun of because of his teeth. Of course, Trump is a master of it. I mean, once he said Sleepy Joe, really, that was the end of it, I think. So it's sort of drawing politics down to this real ugly level of just trying to destroy the person. And of course, it's all over. I mean, I've just mentioned things that are in the UK, but everywhere you go, this is what's happening. So the antidote, of course, is a little bit of humility, really, is to realize that whatever view I have, I can't grasp the whole situation, the whole matrix that the problem is in, and that I need other people's perspective. And the wider my perspective is, the more I can say, well, I'm getting close to understanding the situation. And sometimes people think you're not this teaching tells you not to have a view. Well, remember the Buddha had a view. He had right view. So we can have views. It's just the way we relate to them in terms of identity. I am right. Everybody else is wrong. I'm a lefty. I'm a right winger, and so on and so forth. And there's no need for it. Uh, if we come down to just looking at the issues and asking, well, what can we do here? It's as simple as that. Is what can be done. So this is a big problem. Uh, this polarization, and it's this clinging, to my view. The final one, of course, is clinging to the view of self, and this is the root clinging. From this clinging, all clinging clings, right? And the problem with the self is it only sees the sensual world, and it only sees the sensual world as a place where it can make itself happy. So you can't blame it. You can't blame yourself for wanting to be happy in the sensual world. And what it does, it obviously collects a lot of stuff, feels safer for it, more money in the bank, etc. But then that acquisitiveness has to be guarded, and therefore you're always on the lookout for danger, governments, people like that, to take all your money away. And then, of course, if they're bigger than you, like governments, you tend to run, tend to hide. So you've got this basic triangle, this three-pronged movement into daily life of assertiveness, aversion, and fear. And from that, all the problems arise. So how do we undermine that? Well, obviously, again, it's Vipassana. And I want to point you to this place that we get to sometimes when everything is calm, the mind is still, everything's calm, and you become very much aware of being I've got all these words: observer, the feeler, the experiencer, the knower, the witness. It doesn't matter what you call it, but it's beginning to understand that whatever is perceiving cannot be what is perceived. So when I look at the shed that's in my garden here, I can't be the shed. And so when I go inwards and I perceive a pain, I can't be it. It's an object of my perceiving. And it's making that more and more clear to ourselves that begins to undermine that sense of self, right? And we can also undermine it by just practicing virtues. Anything that undermines that sense of ego, that sense of selfishness, generosity, love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and so on. All these, when we're practicing virtues, we must be undermining the sense of self. It's as simple as that. And finally, just this core belief, this core insight that the Buddha gives us about the self. He saw clearly that the identity comes after the wanting. And it's language what fools us. I say, I want a coffee. See, so the I comes first, and then the want, and then the coffee. But psychologically, it's coffee, want, I. And this allows us to just distance from the want. We can actually see the wanting as an object, some feeling within us. And it gives us just one moment of choice. It's the only moment we have of choice. Now, this isn't some airy-fairy free will. This choice is conditioned. It's conditioned by wisdom or lack of it. And what we want to is know, well, how does wisdom grow? Well, it's the very suffering that's being caused that makes us seek the end of suffering, which guides us towards wisdom. And that's how it works. So this is a really, should we say, amazing insight that the Buddha had into our psychology. So there we have it, these four clingings. Yeah, clinging to sensual pleasure, clinging to rites and rituals as if they were enough to become, to make us liberated, clinging to views and opinions, the conceit of I am right, and finally this clinging to the sense of self. And that one, of course, is the most difficult and the final clinging to be unclung. I'm getting very good with the word cling. So I can only hope my words have been of some assistance, and that by your unclinging, you will be liberated from all suffering sooner rather than later.